Welcome to the Tuning In podcast, where we talk alignment, intuition, and our internal guidance system. We cover woo-woo topics in an approachable and practical way. I'm your host, Dana Evans of Alignful.com. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Tuning In podcast with myself, Dana Evans, and my co-host for the month, Kimi Morton. And today is episode 2 of the Soulular Connections series, and it's episode 69 of the Tuning In podcast. And we left you with quite a cliffhanger last week, and we went right in and discussed that on this week's episode. Kimi and I share about this fear that Kimi brought up last week of, well, if I rest, what if I never get my energy back? And she shares how she often finds herself in a state of semi-resting, but not fully giving in to the rest that her body is asking for. And I riff off of that and share a really interesting story that I had as an example of when I had quit teaching yoga after 6 years of teaching and actually being required to practice. I had decided that I did not want to practice again until I felt inspired. And I share what unfolded there and relate that back to this idea that we don't trust ourselves. We don't trust our bodies enough. We don't trust that if we rest, we'll ever get energy back. Or we sometimes trust that we can rest for 1 day or 2 days, but that the mind has a mental limit on how much it's willing to rest before it panics. So Kimi and I dive deep into that in this week's episode, and we explore different meanings of rest and what that can look like in each of our lives, and how all of us can really start to embody rest as part of our productivity and part of the plan of our lives, and not write it off as something that we will do later. It's a really inspiring conversation, and we would love to hear from you all of how you see rest. How does it work into your life? What stresses you out about resting? What do you wish you could have more of? So if you do have any thoughts, we'd love for you to tag us or message us on Instagram. Kimi is at Kimi M as in Mary, and I'm at Dana_Evans. So without further ado, here's this week's episode of the Soulular Connections series. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Tuning In podcast and another episode of the Soulular Connections series with the lovely co-host, Kimi Morton. Kimi, hello.
Hey. I'm just laughing because it's like we just keep talking and talking. We're like, oh gosh, we should just record this.
That's pretty much what happened. So we're on the high from the last episode, and then we just talked for like a half an hour in between. And then we're like, crap, we should probably hit record. So now we're recording, and now we can't remember why. But now we're recording the next episode in the series. You guys are you're getting our energy building on itself.
Yes. And we had that like incredible listener retention gimmick in the last one, right? That cliffhanger that we left everybody with.
We did. And that was unplanned. That was just pure magic of Kimi wanting to cover a topic and maybe like, hold on, let's make a new episode out of it.
I love it. I'm so excited.
So Kimi, will you refresh our listeners as to what that topic was?
Yes.
And what kind of spurred that? Because I really do want to talk about this. And then I have a couple other things I want to bring in as well.
Yes, it's so good. So as you recall, we were talking about my complicated relationship with rest. And one of the things that I mentioned that comes up for me that makes resting challenging at times is that this fear that I have that my energy is not going to come back. And it's almost like I don't fully rest because while I'm resting, I'm in resistance to the rest because I have a story that like, I guess this is just my new personality. This is just who I am now. Much like when I'm sick, I have the same thing happen to me when I'm sick. And so it's not only that I'm resting, but I'm not enjoying the rest either. I'm not enjoying that downtime because I'm almost like judging myself so harshly for it and fearing that I'm not going to have that return of energy. And it doesn't always happen on that very, very conscious level. Sometimes it's a subconscious thing that's happening and I just don't know why I'm in a bad mood or feeling so grumpy about just needing to like chill out for a little bit. But yeah, that is definitely something that's super present for me. And so I was asking you if you have that experience, and that's where you left us all hanging.
So I like to call that resisting a rest. So we don't want to resist arrest in any form. But
right? Resisting rest. Oh my God, that's so funny.
so, yeah. So this is something that it was one of the first topics that I talked to my inner voice about because let me take you back to 2 years ago when, or okay, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. I'm not totally sure. But when I stopped teaching yoga, I like to compare this to exercise because this is another thing people have complicated relationship with. And when I was a yoga instructor for years, 6 years actually, and part of teaching was requirement of practicing. So we had to practice 3 times a week, which by the way is like way more than I ever want to exercise. I never liked exercising much before that. And then I became a teacher and then I was required to exercise and move. And it was great, but that was 6 years. And so then after that, I didn't feel like moving, doing yoga. Like I needed a break. And so I said to myself, I am not going to do yoga or any type of movement until it feels inspired. I'm not going to do it because I'm stressed because I told the people at the studio that they'd see me, that I wouldn't be going away. I'm not going to do it because I'm afraid that my body is going to lose all of its muscle tone, or that I'm afraid I'm going to lose all my tricks that I learned in yoga, or any reason except waking up and being like, oh, I want to move my body. Now, can you imagine embarking on that journey? Like, guys, this was not easy. There is so much tied up in movement. And like, what does it mean to be fit and healthy? And how does that look? Well, it looks like 30 minutes of cardio, 5 days a week, 2 days of strength training, and, yoga to balance you in between, whatever, right? We all have a story. And so I embarked on that journey, and it was 3 months that I just stopped working out. And then one day I woke up and I was like, man, I want to do yoga. And like I got back into it. But in that 3 months, like things that I did was going on walks was about all I really did. And it was such an intense period of like, because I would wake up, I'd be like, I can't do this any longer, right? I just got to do this. It's never going to happen. If I don't make myself do it, I will never exercise. And I value a fit body. Like I care about my body being healthy and strong. And if I don't exercise, I'm going to lose all of that. Well, first of all, that actually didn't happen. But second of all, I realized how much that 6 years of required to move, whether I wanted to or not, had impacted me. But then I needed the break, and then I allowed the break until the break was over. But the break ended because I was inspired and guided to move again, not because my mind told me to based on a story. So that being said, Kimi, that was a similar story to me with resting. And what I have found, and I'd be curious to hear this with you, it's gotten really intense in this like sloth experiment. But up until then, I realized that my mind had a threshold. So it was actually pretty cool with like 4 to 5 days off of not doing. And I'd be like, man, I'm so good at like chilling. Like I don't overwork. I'm not tied to working with, like I had all these things. And then like I remember one week I was like on day 7, I just had no energy. And I was like, oh my God, what's happening to me? I'm never going to have energy again. And I realized there is a threshold. And so I think each of us has a threshold of what is our mind willing to accept of like, this is okay for you to rest. Like you can have a day off. You can have 2-3 days off. But after that, there's something wrong and we can't trust anymore. And so it goes to show to me that like, we're never actually allowing our body to guide us because there's the trickery of the mind having already predetermined what is okay. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. Yes. Yeah. And I think what I have done in order to, it's like almost like I need evidence. So I think that's why I'm so obsessed with a weekly planning process, because I have years and years of evidence where I can like look back and be like, okay, at least all these times I was tired and then I wasn't after that. So I look to that and it comforts me. So I don't know, maybe that's why I like tracking so much, because yeah, if I don't do that, then yeah, I begin to like just sense, yeah, I don't know. It's a really interesting thing. And I think too, what we were talking about last time, taking that time to make the connections is really important for me. That's what you did for me in that moment, right? Where you're like, okay, remember the last time you rested and then this is what happened. I'm like, oh, right. So slowing down to make those connections has been really helpful for me too.
And then tuning in. And I think that's where I've been able to really embrace this is checking in with my inner voice, because I think I've told this story before, but at the beginning of COVID in 2020, whereas like technically like my business wasn't affected or impacted, like I already worked from home, like nothing much changed except that I just suddenly had no energy to work. And I was beating myself up so bad because I'm like, nothing's changed. Other people have had like horrible things happen. And now you're saying you're too tired to get things done, even though you have work to do. Kind of had work to do. And so I checked in with my inner voice, and my inner voice kept saying to me, breathe and receive, rest is best. And that, at that point, I had a pretty good connection with my inner voice. I was used to talking to it, right? I've been practicing the trust and listening to it. And I was like, fine, like I'll listen, like fine. Like, let's see what you got, inner voice, because this is bullshit. So I listened, and every day I was like, what do I need to do today? Rest is best. Where should I focus my energy today? Rest is best. And I'm like, am I even hearing my inner voice? Because all I keep hearing is rest is best. Now, is this my mind? Is my mind lazy, right? We're always afraid of our minds being lazy, which is hilarious because it's like they're incapable of that. And what unfolded was about 4 weeks, maybe to 5 weeks of doing almost nothing, like very little, bare minimum, really, to get by. And then all of a sudden, I got so busy. And I think you were in that too, because there's a lot of the stuff that we're both involved in with like BBD. Like all of a sudden, my plate was full. Like I had 3 million calls. I'm like, God, I've never had so many calls. And it was a good 4 months. It was until really September when I took a vacation, a 12-day vacation, that I had just been slammed. And looking back, I'm like, oh my God, what my inner voice knew that I did not was that I needed to rest and recover and take the downtime while I had space for it, because I was preparing for something big to happen.
Oh, so good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now that you mention it, that's something that happens a lot in my life, is that I'll be like resisting rest. And then I'll get really busy, or a lot will be on my plate all of a sudden. I'm like, well, I should have enjoyed that rest while I had it.
Because that's what we do. Like when we're so busy, we say, right? I just wish I could have a break. And then when we get a break, we're like, oh my God, I'm lazy. I have nothing to do. I'm worthless and I can't break. and I need to fill my schedule. And so what I look at that is like, let's flip the script. Like, let's know that you are a human, right? Who is not a machine. And okay, this isn't the best example because you're in Hawaii and it is summer all the time, but like, it's not summer all the time. Like, the seeds need to be planted. And so, especially after like a period of like a lot of energy, naturally our bodies are going to ask us for a pause. And if we gift ourselves the pause that is asked of us and like we tune in and be like, well, what do you need? Like, what do you need in this moment? Do you need a nap? Do you need to go on a walk? Do you just need to take the afternoon off? Do you need to, outsource a few of your tasks? Like, what do I need to give myself this space? I have found that the more willing we are to just go all in and give ourselves a space, the quicker we rejuvenate. Because like you said, like when we're in resistance, I mean, I do this too. Don't get me wrong. Like this happened to me freaking on Saturday. Okay, Saturday, a weekend. I woke up and had 11 things on my freaking task list. I was like, I'm going to clean the entire house, and then I'm going to edit this entire video, and then I'm going to record this podcast. And then I woke up and felt horrible. I was so tired. And then I watched movies all day, and then I was mad at myself because I had a bad day because I was lazy on a Saturday and I had nothing to show for my life, right? It's like so desperate. Well, by midway through the day, I actually like reset myself. I was like, okay, this is stupid. Like, just let it be. So like I caught myself. And then I said, you know what? I bet I'll feel better tomorrow. So what happened? I woke up Sunday with so much energy. And here's the kicker. And I think this is like the coolest experience because I look for these things, and I'm going to be curious about what you say, Kimmy, but had I tried to do all the things on Saturday when I felt like crap, it would have taken me a really long time. It would have sapped the little bit of energy, and I would have been really frustrated along the way. Now, I may have gotten some of the things done, but it would have been like an uphill. It would be like rolling rocks uphill. Meanwhile, on Sunday, after a full day of Saturday of doing nothing, I woke up at like 5:30. I felt energized. I felt inspired. And I was like a little ninja. Like, I woke up, it was like laundry in, kitchen clean, dishwasher unloaded, run the vacuum, boom, boom, boom. And I literally had everything done before my cacao ceremony at 1 p.m. And it was such an effortless, easy day.
Yeah.
And that is what I want us to like remember of like, if you give yourself that deep rest and you actually like dive in, that's where your body rejuvenates so that you have energy to do things. Otherwise, you're like always operating on not quite enough energy.
Oh my God. Totally. Yeah. It's kind of trusting the stickiness. And this is the place that I hope to get, like those that go through peak performance boot camp, my students, my clients, I hope this is where I want people to get to. It's my dream, my vision. And what I'm always working on for myself as well is this feeling of like, when that stickiness hits, you stop for a moment and you appreciate that stickiness as like a gift, right? So if you are low energy, if you are procrastinating, if you are in resistance to whatever it is that you feel like you should be doing, like why is that happening for you? And can you trust that stickiness to like put it down for a second, gather what your inner wisdom is trying to tell you from that moment, and then act accordingly from there? Because I think that what happens is so often it's like we're, as you said, like trying to do something, it's not feeling right. So we end up pushing and spending so much time, so much energy. And then if we had just like waited just a little bit, that effortless energy would have come back in. We would have taken the nap we needed to. We would have, I don't know, sometimes I feel like that's divine timing also that is working for us. And we're not aware of how those energies are even working, and that the universe is there kind of like slowing you down in a sense because it knows better than you. It knows that tomorrow is a better day for you to accomplish this thing. But that only comes from, again, trusting in your inner voice, trusting in your ability to have your energy return again, and trusting in that stickiness.
Exactly. And we can't know. That's the thing, is we can't know how something is working in our favor we have to find that out later. And the question is, would you rather find out like, oh, I should have taken that rest. I should have taken the break because now I'm really drained because I have so much to do that I really have to do. Or would you rather look back and say, man, I'm glad I listened and took the pause because now I have the energy that I need to give to step into what's next and to really take control of that. And here's the interesting thing too, like I get like that fear, like I'm never going to have energy again because it's real. Like that is very much like the mind is afraid, but we never truly are stagnant, right? Like even when we're doing nothing and laying on the couch, like our cells are rejuvenating, like the blood is pumping, like ideas are flowing, like things happen in the pause. In fact, everything happens in the pause. Like that is where the inspiration comes from. And my inner voice, gosh, because this has been intense for me during these like 3 months of doing just so little and like having so many deep rest days and so much release and clearing, my inner voice has said it to help me shift my relationship to work, which is very complicated. It's like, ugh. And it says, look, the not doing is the doing that will inspire the action that you need to take, the next best action. So, what would it look like? Like, this is like such a thought for me because it's what I'm trying to live into. But it's like, what would it look like if we rest until it's time to work instead of working until we have to rest? Like that's what I'm thinking, like considering, like because what's happened for me during this experiment too, everything is in ebbs and flows. Like last week, it's like a freaking roller coaster. It was like Monday, no energy. Tuesday, a ton of energy. Wednesday, no energy. Thursday, a ton of energy. Friday, I was like dead. I was like, I don't know what's going on. It was like a split day, but for me, like I'm putting rest first. And I'm finding that the first, like, I don't know, Kimmy, like month of this experiment, I really was just watching Netflix on the couch in the middle of the day. Like, I really was, and like kind of depressed about it. I really was. But here's what's so cool. Like, this is what the mind can't know until you experience it. I got bored of watching Netflix on the couch. It was great until it wasn't. And then I was like, man, I'm over this. And so then it was like, then I went to books and God, I've cruised through so many books. And like, then it was like, man, I want to do this vlog. Like, ideas are coming out of this. And then I can take the inspired action that's necessary. But I don't have to create things for myself to do just to make my mind feel better and not rest.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I think that one of the things that can help us so much is by when we are in those waves of energy, when we do have some momentum, we have some motivation, that is really a great time for us to set up systems and activate support in our lives so that we can take that time off when we need it. And that is the thing that interests me the most about outsourcing. Like when I first started teaching about productivity and I was teaching about like hiring a virtual assistant, hiring a team, like I was thinking about it in terms of increased productivity. But what I love about it now is the way that it can give us increased not doing time. And still we're like working towards our goals, right? So by bringing on a virtual assistant, bringing on a team, automating things, maybe automating your social media, batching content, any of those things give us these like deep spaces of rest and rejuvenation but things can keep moving, right? While we are resting. So I don't know. I've been like really geeking out on that a lot lately and trying to ride the waves of energy that I have just naturally, different parts of my cycle, for example, of, okay, what systems can I put in now so that I can give myself some pockets of nothing where I can have those ideas. I can follow my intuition and my inspiration a little bit more. That's really the gift of the nothing time, right? The time on the couch, the time where we can like just turn off our brain. That's when we get these excited ideas. That's when inspiration hits. That's when we think of somebody that we haven't thought of in a while and we reach out to them and make a connection that was lost before, right? So yeah, I'm really interested in figuring out ways that we can do more of that for ourselves so that we can give ourselves more space, more grace and space.
I know, grace and space. And what came up when you were saying that too is, and this is, I fall prey to this sometimes too. And I think it's something for us to look out for when we're kind of trying to watch our ebbs and flows. Like when we're trying to ride our own energy waves and listen, is I will fall into the trap of, well, if I'm on a break, if I'm on a vacation, if I'm having a rest afternoon, then the mind tries to make that useful time. So it's like, well, you better be journaling. Like you better, like this is your downtime. So you should really journal and do a little ceremony. And like we add like good rest practices. So then we like say that's good or bad.
Right.
It's bad if you're just on the like couch watching TV. It's good if you're reading a self-help book or a spiritual book, right? So then we start to put all these expectations, then unconscious, usually expectations, where then we still don't feel rested because we're judging it.
Right. Oh, the judgment piece. Ugh. That's the kicker right there. Yeah. Oh my goodness. I'm just like thinking of all the times that I have done that to myself. It's just like another should or another, yeah. I know. And what I really feel when I listen to my inner voice is my soul often on a day off or just time off, I don't want to be learning anything more. Like that is where I just think about that sometimes and I feel so exhausted. I think as entrepreneurs, we are constantly expanding and growing. It is deep work. And so to truly balance that out with deep rest, sometimes that's just like turning off your brain for a little bit and like not journaling, watching something mindless. God, just giving ourselves a little bit of a true break. So yeah, that speaks to me deeply.
Yeah. And I think for each person that's different. I remember talking to one of my mentors like a while ago, and it's two sisters. And they're both very fascinating women, but very different. And the one of them, Micah, I remember her telling me that like her sister, like Desi, like watches Netflix to like unwind. And I was like, Desi watches TV? I would just assume she just like meditates and like is blissed out all the time. And Micah's like, well, no. She said, for me, meditation is my escape and it's how I recharge and I just need to sit in silence. She said, but for Desi, who I think is equally, they're both mystics. Like they're very otherworldly women. Like her nature is she just needs to go and like numb out watching TV. I'm like, oh my God, it's like celebrities. They're just like us. Like all of a sudden I felt like it's okay. Like we attach, and again, it's so unconscious, but I think we attach on this like spiritual path of insights and, being a good person, a good entrepreneur, and like a really connected person that like there's do's and don'ts.
Yeah. Oh my God. So true. I remember in our, I think I pulled the peak performance bootcamp people and I was like, answer this sentence. And like anybody that's listening, do this. And it was just like, rest is blank. And to hear like all the stories that we attach to rest and even like the things that we do during rest, because like everybody has a different definition of rest. For some people, that means Netflix. For some people, that means meditation. So already there, it can bring up all kinds of different stories, right? And then we have all these stories about not doing, like we're lazy. As you said, we have to be making good use of that time. And just that
you'll never get the energy back.
You'll never get the energy back. I think that it's such a important place to start first to understand like what is your relationship with rest And what also brings you joy when you are resting? Like, what does resting mean to you? It's a good, great question to ask yourself. What does rest mean to you? How much of it do you want to be doing? What brings you joy when you are resting? What truly brings you joy? Because rest is not just about, I feel like there's so many different things we could talk about here, right? It's about the physical rest. Your body may need some physical sleep, napping, recharging. But then there's the mental rest. And that's what we're talking about here, right? Where it's like,
Oh, mental rest. Yes.
the mental rest of like, God, can I just like not have somebody ask me a question for 5 damn minutes, right? Like we're coaches, so we're constantly asking questions and being asked questions. And then the emotional rest of that like deep inner work that we're doing, and we're journaling and we're finding out about ourselves. And sometimes we just need a hug and to be told that it's like, okay. And maybe we just need a deep connection with somebody. And then spiritual rest, whatever that means for us. And I mean, that's going to be really, such an individual thing that everybody knows at different times what they need to restore their energy and reconnect to a deeper sense of purpose. So yeah, I think it's important to kind of think about it in those terms and maybe even have a list.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes like one of my favorite exercises, right, is like creating a joy list. And I have to look at a joy list because I forget what I enjoy doing. Like, what the hell is that? Why as a human do I forget what I enjoy doing? I don't understand that. But it's definitely something that happens. And also I think that list can change, at times. But when we begin having these conversations with us and getting this picture in our mind of what rest could look like, and then we're like resting with intention. Then it's like, okay, Netflix is on my joy list. So I'm going to go and watch Netflix right now because that's one of my favorite things to do. We were just talking before we hit record, about cleaning and cocktails, the combination of cocktails and cleaning. And I'm like, oh my God, that's my favorite thing in the world. And my whole body, right? My whole body like changed, like my physiology, that is deeply restorative to me.
Same girl.
Making a cocktail and cleaning out a closet, like that is not going to be everybody's idea of rest. But if that's what it is for me, then I can do that and do it with intention so that when I'm doing it, I'm not judging any part of it. That's how we begin to release the judgment, I feel.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And it's, that reminder to come back to self, right? That reminder to have the different aspects of rest. That was big for me. Like, I was always pretty good at resting my physical body, but I often didn't give myself the mental rest. And I've even gotten further where I've realized that one of the ways I need mental and emotional rest is turning off my phone.
Mm-hmm.
And you know this because we both do it, but like I spend a good portion of my day voice memoing people, texting people, writing posts, responding to messages, right? Be it direct messages or phone. So like the funny thing is my family, like no one ever expects me to answer the phone. Like I just like, I'm at this point where usually by the time someone calls me, I'm like, I can't speak to you. So I just like, but the sad thing is who usually gets screened out are like my friends and family. Because they're like the ones that I feel the most comfortable saying no to. But what happens is usually like Saturdays or Sundays, I'm just like off my phone. Like even my mom, she doesn't even expect to hear from me on one of those days because it's like I just need to stop engaging outward. And it's so easy. I think I shared this with you at one point, but like I definitely see that one of my the holes in my bucket is engaging with other people, like initiating engagements with other people as a way to feel like accomplished. Like, oh, I made these great connections. But like for me, it's actually like I'm poking holes in my own bucket because then it's like requiring a bunch of conversation, which is fun, but it doesn't necessarily restore me. Like sometimes I use that as a way to restore when actually what I need is just to like sit in silence and just like step away from everything.
It's another great place, right? At least as an entrepreneur, that we can begin putting some systems in place. Like, what a great place to start is getting some of our like interactions and conversations and like customer service handled by a team, because that takes a whole lot of that off of our plate so that we can have more space, because there is a compulsion there, that I feel, where I'm like, oh, this person's waiting for me to respond to them. And even as you were saying, like, people don't expect you to respond, I was like, my first instinct was like, oh my God, you're so lucky. Like, as if everybody expects me to respond. And like, if they do, that's only because that's me and the precedent that I have set and the boundaries that I haven't.
For the record, I am always shocked by how quickly you respond to like anything I send you. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's so efficient. Because like, it is not uncommon for me to like need a day to respond to anything. Like, often I get in the flow, but like, you're so quick.
Well, I guess, like, okay, first of all, not everybody has my phone number. So that's like a boundary that I've set. So I typically give it to people that I really want to hear from. And I get so excited every time I see you pop up. So I have that, like, I just get so excited to respond. So that's my excited energy. And I have a very positive association with responding to you. For me, it's more like the, not text messages so much, but DMs, like Instagram DMs, and people, like, I have anxiety that somebody will DM me and I'll check it, but then I won't respond in that moment. And then I'll forget about it forever because that notification isn't there. So then I'm like, well, then do I just leave that little red dot there? But then I don't want to because I see it. Like, it's just like a weird thing.
You're going to forget about it forever, just like you're never going to have energy if you rest.
Exactly. But I think it's so important to have this conversation too, because if we're feeling that type of anxiety or compulsion to respond, and that's giving us any feels as it is, then we actually block our expansion, right? Because we feel like, well, if I can't even handle this, then how am I going to handle a wider audience, more clients?
Oh my God, I feel that so deeply.
Yeah, right. And so that's why at this time we can again look for the gift in it. And what is the gift? The gift is these feelings of anxiety are telling us, okay, something about this is feeling uncomfortable to me. How can I solve this so that I can expand comfortably? And that could be, bringing somebody on to handle your direct messages on Instagram. Like, what a simple thing. Somebody could just like go in there and respond for you, or collect all the messages and report to you like once a week. You could have somebody managing your email too, right? Like all these things that like, oh yeah, I guess I could do that, but we just don't think about it. So what a great question where we can say, okay, what would it feel like if I had 10 times the audience that I do? If I had 10 times the communication that I do? If I had 10 times the text messages, 10 times the DMs, 10 times the emails, how would I handle it then? Put that system in place now, and then you'll feel way more. Well, first of all, it'll help you right now immensely. And then also you'll feel more comfortable with being able to expand to that next level, and you won't subconsciously block that.
Oh, that is so good. And what came up for me too is like also the idea of like blocking, like you've been doing, is like, here's my social engagement time. Because what ends up happening is like a lot of what I try to do, and it's like, it's hard because I enjoy it, but I also like overly tether myself. And so it's like, then, you're so good at like reminding us to have focused blocks. And so what will happen to me is like, I just go my whole day like constantly in engagement, which never gives me like a focused time to create. And so then I feel really like, well, at the end of the day, because it's like I haven't produced what the deep work, right, what you get with space. So I always like the idea of like morning and evening. Like I could, if I was feeling overwhelmed, or if I had 10 times more, like I could just block and be like, this is when I go in and like do the engagement. Like I bookend my day that way. That sounds fun. But yeah, and having people help. I mean, for example, you want to hear one?
Yes.
So Kimi, Kimi came and did a wonderful tapping workshop for my members. And it's been almost a week and I haven't uploaded it. And it is not hard, but the reason I haven't uploaded it is because I need to make a video of how to upload it.
Aha.
For a future VA. And so I've been sitting on it because I'm like, well, I need to make the best use of this time because I'm going to have to record. So I have like the process in place. So if I ever need it, I have it. Well, all of that energy has created a lot of stress. So now my members don't have the video. Like I haven't downloaded it and I haven't uploaded it. And it's created this whole thing. And it's just anxiety inducing. And it's something that I will outsource at some point, but I haven't yet. And so I'm just sitting on it. And then it's like nobody wins.
And how do you make the video? Do you just use Loom?
Yeah.
And so what's different from doing it versus doing it and recording it?
This is why you keep coach friends around in your life. I guess the only thing that's different is the talking part.
Yeah.
Which is literally just walking through what I'm doing.
Right. Talking out loud.
I think I was feeling like I had to create like this whole like Word document and like make everything.
Yeah. Make like a SOP or something, like a standard this is a standard operating procedure for this. Yeah. It's funny, right? The way we turn tasks into these big monsters in our head. Yeah. And sometimes we just simply, at least though, you're thinking about recording it, which is so great. Like usually it's the opposite, right? Where we're just in that habit of constantly just doing without recording and capturing it. But yeah, just click that Loom button.
And then I'll just do it. And then if I need to write steps, that can always happen later. But again, it's like something that doesn't, it's like the thing that needs to be done is the video needs to be uploaded to my members, but I'm letting like the possible need for it in the future keep me from like, and as if I won't ever have another video to upload to the members.
Right. There's that too.
What is the word? Catastrophize.
Yes. Oh my gosh. My brain loves to do that. It really does. It makes tasks, and I think many of us do this, where we have something on our list, and sometimes, especially if it's been there for a really long time, it gets bigger in our mind. Because again, we've been subconsciously programming ourselves that like, oh, that's something that's hard for me to do. That is something that I have day after day not been getting to. That's why we talk about like eating that frog, right? Like the book by Brian Tracy. Those are our frogs. And we want to then figure out, okay, when's the best time to tackle a frog like that? Typically the morning. And accountability can help a lot. So like even you just told your whole podcast audience that you're going to do it. So there you go. There's some accountability.
Except remember, I'm a rebel. So
you have to like lock in, as a rebel, you have to lock in the identity of like, you're somebody that eats frogs and loves it.
Yeah, I eat frogs for breakfast.
Yeah. And we can connect to that feeling too of like, we all know how good it feels once that task is done.
Oh.
I think that's a big motivation hack that we have wrong. We do this wrong a lot of times. We think about the thing instead of thinking about how we'll feel after. And if we just make that little shift, it's such a game changer. Because thinking about the thing typically won't get us the motivation and the energy that we want. We're really after the feeling after. And it feels so good to eat those frogs.
It really does. And like, for me too, like I try to picture, especially right now, like I'm working like minimal and I've been doing most of my work between like 7 and 10 in the morning because I've been waking up so early. I'm like, I just want to do this because then I'm like, imagine, like picture how good it will feel to have like, even if you work until noon, to have the full afternoon free. And I live for that, right? I live for the freedom to choose. And so that in its own, it's like, okay, get up and do the coaching. Do the coaching. Get that thing done first. Because if that's not done, this is our group that we work in. Like, if that's not done, like that weighs on me until it's done and I don't get as many other tasks. And I'm like, if I get up and do that, then that builds me a little momentum. And then like I do the next thing. And like by giving myself that little timeline, like to be done by noon so that I can have the freedom, it keeps me from like dragging things out. And like you said, like so many times the tasks are really simple. And once we just kind of get in the flow, it's like, then it flows.
Yes. Yeah. And you have such great awareness about it too. And I think that's where we can all start. I see this with my daughter all the time. She's 17. She's a junior in high school and they just have a lot of work. And especially this year, my son is 14, same thing. They have a lot of work and it's distance learning. So there's a lot more, like a time management that they have to do. There's a lot of it is self-paced, which I'm like self-paced. I would have had a really hard time with self-paced as a teenager. And it's all online. There's just like less accountability because you're not in the classroom. So it's been interesting teaching her all the things that I teach my students to her. And she's been loving it, eating it up. She took Peak Performance Boot Camp, as you know, and it really helped her. I think you're so right that we don't get taught these things. So I feel really grateful that I can, share these little hacks and strategies with my kids. But one of the things that she goes through all the time is catastrophizing. And she's like, it shuts her down. This happens. This is like we go into fight or flight, right? We feel like, oh my God, I just have so much that I have to do. And I have to do this and I have to do that. And we spend all this energy thinking about all the things that we think we have to do. And what she has learned to do this year is to have that be a trigger. Okay, I'm catastrophizing. Okay, I'm like feeling overwhelmed. So now overwhelm is her cue to get it all written down, like out of the brain, write it down. What are all the things? Okay, let's see. What do I have to do for English? What do I have to do for Japanese class? What do I have to do for this? And getting each one done and then checking them off. And also noting how much time each one is going to take and putting them in order of when each one is due. And just that simple act of getting it out of this big amorphous, overwhelming blob that's spinning around in our head, making us shut down. We're like, okay, we can see what we're working with and we can do a little like this one's only going to take 10 minutes. I'm going to do that. It's going to get me a little bit of momentum. So it's so powerful just for us to do that type of brain dump. So that we shine the light on the monster so it's not so scary.
And here, how about this? Because I love the idea of if you're really feeling the need to rest, doing the brain dump first. Because then you can see, I mean, it would just even happen to me the other day. Like I had all these things written down and like I was like, God, I have so much to do before X, right? Like I had this like arbitrary, let me be clear, date in my head of when these things need to be done. And I was like, but I'm exhausted. Like I just done a big like energy clearing and I'm like, I just want to rest. So what do I do? Well, the list, like seeing everything made me realize that there were very few things that actually had to be done. And there were a lot of things that like cleaning the bathrooms. I'm like, let's be honest, like it's okay. Like that is not like this task that, so is that more important than my rest and restoration? Like that's the question that I can then look at all the tasks and say, is this more important or is my rest more important? And some of the tasks may be more important, and as we know, like sometimes getting those tasks done can help your mind rest, but just seeing everything is so powerful because then you're like, wow, like most of this stuff is not immediate. And I do have the space to take the afternoon. Like I do have the space to take a nap. I do have the space to go on a walk and just like reconnect with myself or my partner. And that I think is really, it like puts the control back into your hands.
I love that. And if you're looking at that list and you feel like you don't have the space for that, that's a gift in itself. And it's an opportunity for you to reach out to figure out how you can take some of that stuff off your plate, get more support with it. But until we really look at what we're dealing with, we can't have those conversations.
Right. And I think it's nice to remind our partners and to let them play a role. For example, I'm the cook in the house. Okay. And some days it weighs on me and I'll like go to John and complain. And I'm like, oh, I have so much to do. Like, kind of very victim-y. And then, you just get to go on your run at the end of the day. And then I had to cook dinner. And he's like, well, we could just get Chipotle. That's always his response.
That's a great response. That's like all I want someone to tell me sometimes. Like, I love that.
But it's like, it's such a good like shock, because what will happen is I notice that like I'm putting so much on myself, and I'm like, I can't rest because I have to make this dinner for you. And like, let's be honest, like John is very happy with Chipotle, and so am I. And it's like almost that choice to take it, to do the easy thing sometimes feels harder.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Because why? Which I think might lead us into next week's episode.
Ooh.
Because of work and worth, and how we identify, like we see ourselves more valuable the more we do.
Oh, the self-worth piece. Yes. Oh, that's so good. Yep. Cliffhanger.
Cliffhanger. I love these cliffhangers.
We'll keep you coming back for more.
Yeah. So tune in next week for us to talk more about work and worth, and what Kimmy and I know have both learned quite a bit. I've had like some legit, literal, hysterical crying breakdowns in inner voice sessions of like my mind disallowing life to be flowy and me to not earn my worthiness to be. And there's a lot of story. I'll share a lot of my story that's been built up around that, like my whole life. And I know Kimmy has a lot to share too.
I know, me too. I'm thinking the same thing. Yeah, we often have a lot of stories, right, where we feel like we have to not only earn our worth, but earn our rest.
Yes, ma'am. Oof, chills. All right. Well, on that note, my friends, thank you for tuning in. We will catch you next week. And as always, you can find Kimmy on Instagram. My co-host Kimmy at Kimi M as in Morton, her last name. And I'm at Dana_Evans. And we just would love to hear how you guys are liking this Soulular Connection series, and just listening to us talk more in depth about these topics that I think honestly are not talked about enough, and would love to hear your takeaways. And as always, you can reach out to both of us.
Yes. We'll love getting your DMs.
Right. We promise we won't be stressed about them.
Those we like.
Those are the ones we like. And we will be the ones responding because we haven't outsourced that yet. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Thank you for joining me on another episode of the Tuning In podcast. As always, if this would resonate with anyone you know, please share the episode. You can follow along with my journey on Instagram at Dana_Evans, or find me on my website at alignful.com.